Am I breaking through? Will you feel me too? I still wanna run to you. Am I breaking through? Will you feel me too? Still wanna run to you. Am I breaking through? Will you feel me Am I breaking through? Am I breaking through? Am I breaking through? Am I breaking through? Am I breaking through?
And we are back. We are back with another week. Probably don't recognize both of our faces, but I'm coming back from a well, probably I don't even remember the last time that I casted here, but I'm glad to be back to Aegis Esports now to cast the Legends of Runeterra tournament, something that I started with, and it's so exciting to be back. But I'm also with a new caster entering. I'm not sure how many tournaments have you done or anything previously, but entering to the Aegis cast now, and it's really exciting to have you here. Em, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is MHJ. You can call me M. This is going to actually be my first professional cast, and I'm beyond excited. A little nervous, but it's going to be a good day.
Yeah, and it's always exciting having new people cast me. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not even that experimented. I've casted a little bit, but it's great to have people to join me, and especially if they can help me with a couple of things because I already told you I'm not the most knowledgeable of casters or players in Legends of Runeterra. I try my
Mhm.
best, but it's not my specialty. So having someone that can certainly help with that, it's going to be marvelous. So to start today, we have for week four, a week that was pushed back for a week because last week had the patch problem, so we couldn't actually have week four. We're going to take week four now. It's going to be an exciting match, and we have two teams that potentially looking a little bit separate in where they stand in the standings right now, but can show off, can showcase a lot of good things, and I'm really excited to see what they bring in here. I would like to jump already into the decks so that we can showcase what some of the exciting decks that we may see. And to start us off, it's a deck by Mythonical from Jordos in Arms that it's the Draven Scion. It's a deck I would say something that has been since the start. It has taken obviously some adaptations, but it's certainly something that it's potentially not that new. It's a discard deck with a lot of aggressiveness, a lot of action, a lot of to try to kill the enemy with as much damage as possible. And I like this kind of decks, especially when there's a lot of control or mid game power in some of their decks. I like when you opt into some of the more aggressive decks because it brings a nice mix of decks that we simply haven't seen that much. And I'm glad that we get to see this deck today. Hopefully, we actually get to see it played. But actually not that sure if we're going to see this because I feel like on the other side, there's not many things that could go well against the Draven Scion. What do you think about this deck? What do you look at when you look at it? What kind of things do you see that could be potentially good to go to for this deck to make use of?
Yeah, so when I was looking at the matchups, I actually thought that this deck seemed pretty well positioned into the opposing lineups, which is why I took interest in it. Particularly looking at how mid-rangey it is, and looking at a Sump Dredger here, seeing lots of burn being run in this list too. 3 Decimate, 3 Fervor, 3 Get Excited, 3 Mystic Shot. Looks like Face is going to be the place for this deck, absolutely.
Yeah, you can really see the amount of spell aggressiveness that it's been thrown into this deck, and I think that we've seen quite a few decks that do throw a lot of spells, but they tend to be much more control based decks, right? Like the amount of spells that you throw into a deck really can measure up to what kind of deck do you actually want to play. But even with the amount of spells that we have here, there's a lot of aggressiveness, a lot of action that can just even take the this deck to be so powerful early on, even though it can be mid rangey as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And even the two of Rummage in this list, I'm a huge fan of Rummage. Even in the Scion deck, absolutely. Just letting you refill your hand after getting rid of some of these cheap units, cheap spells, and keep cycling because this list does not carry the Jinx for that hand refill. So the Rummage is really important here too.
Yeah, and I think you're touching on important points, which are cards or just other spells or units that can really accommodate to go against or in favor of this deck. And I think you pointed out this at the start. There's not a good amount in the opposing team's list to try and go against this deck. So I'm really this is also why I thought we wouldn't see much of this deck today, or at least in this matchup from with Mathonical. I don't think we're going to get a glimpse of what this deck can really showcase. But I really like the idea of having one of these decks thrown into the mix because most of the time we do not see that much variety in terms of having something really aggressive to throw off your opponent and then having something much more meta like or much more control that I think a lot of players have been taking a much more of a liking of recently.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
And I think we can jump into the next deck that I think we want to highlight from Slay One Turn Kill Club. I think you have a much better overview of what this deck can showcase, so you can take it away.
Yeah, looking at this list, I haven't seen this list on ladder or seen much of this list, but it looks like the Aphelios Fizz version, except it looks like just instead of Targon, they've done a swap for Udyr and some of his support spells, which is instead of being more control-y, it's just gonna put overwhelm threats on in the mid game.
Yeah, and I kind of like what you pointed out with this deck, the fact that it's not that common to see, right? Like it certainly caught my eye when I saw it. I actually wanted to be able to see a little bit more of this deck because it's like you're pointing out, not something that we see. And if it can find a good enough matchup for it to shine, I can really see it being one of those not cheesy but um, specific kind of decks that you really have to be careful about if you really want to play against it or not, because there's not a lot of. Oh, I think I got caught a little bit. There's not a lot of play to showcase what it can really do.
Right, yeah, absolutely. And another underrated aspect of Udyr decks is actually that this fizz with the Pokey Stick, the elusive, and all of the different ways of just hitting face and chipping away at it. Udyr provides a little bit of burn into certain matchups that can't heal from it too, or interact with that with those ram stances. So that can sometimes get some of that little bit of damage that you need to finish that game off.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to see it coming through with the potential leads that we had that we just saw from the both of the teams. So I hope that this deck does get playtime. I feel like with the Draven Sion potentially may not get the playtime that we would like to see because well, unlike Draven Sion has a much bigger sample size for what it can do. I think that this also falls into the category of niche, and it's kind of hard to really see it coming unless you're really comfortable going against this kind of decks. But looking at it now that we have looked both of the decks, I kind of want to know how much will we need till the match starts so that we either throw it to the bands or we just begin as soon as possible, or we can just talk a little bit. Hmm? Okay, that's fine. So we still have a little bit of time before we start. So I think we can throw it out to a couple of decks that we have seen that have caught our eyes, or anything like that? Anything other that you think may be interesting to see from this match?
Yeah, I did see a oh, 1 second here.
Yeah, no
Oh,
problem.
sorry, I have to pull it back up. Did you see any?
I think no. I hope not.
1 second here.
So talking a little bit about the potential lineups, because we have one certain kill club against Jordan in arms, we do know that those are going to be the potential teams here. I do want to say that I like some of the archetypes that are being shown. I feel a couple of much more logical or typical that we have seen. I think I would like to see the Phyllis looks. I think that actually looks quite interesting, if I'm honest. I think that is something that I at least haven't seen much and would love to see it. If it's brought up, something that I know of as well that I've seen a little bit more about Misfortune Twisted Fate, which I like as a deck, would be interesting to see. So I'm kind of really excited to see what players end up being able to pull off, because sometimes they're like, well, I've said it a couple of times already, but really there it's dependent on the team what they really, or on the player what they really want to play against and what they really want to be forced onto playing against. And I'm kind of thinking what some of these decks would you really want to force yourself into and what not, because there's a lot of variety in here. Like just watching it, I can see quite a bit of variety, and it can be hard to think correctly about what you really want to go against.
Yeah, there is a lot of variety in these matchups for sure. Looking at the one turn kill club lineups, a little bit more control-y. You're seeing lots of some Caitlyn Ezreal's, some of the different package with the Fizz Udyr, which while not necessarily being control-y, it has a lot of refill and it has a lot of lasting power throughout the game. See an Ezreal Victor here, Senna control, like you mentioned, Aphelios Lux, which I've seen people playing. It seems pretty strong, in my opinion, and it seems like they're trying to go the distance. On the Yordles and Arms side, you can definitely see they're trying to go a little bit more aggressive, and just end the game out by like turn 7 or 8 or earlier in every game.
Yeah, and it's an interesting dynamic that I think we don't see much when we think about the matchups, and it's because we're already in week 4, so you already have understanding of what a couple of teams may like to do. You have already seen some matches that can show you what teams tend to prioritize or what they like to play, and we can see in this kind of matchup, like you're pointing out, the fact that there's so much more aggressiveness on Yordles in arms. I think may come into what one turn kill club may want to do, which is much more controlled side. They want to try and keep the game into a place where they just can take it longer and try and win through that. And instead, they saw the opportunity to just bring much more aggressiveness, try and make it so that they win in the earlier rounds, like you're pointing out, and just make it the match as quick as possible. Which it's a strategy that I can value. It's a strategy that I found actually kind of interesting. I don't think we've seen much, even when I in the last tournament that I was part of. I think that teams kind of ended up going into the safety of the control, the safety net that control decks does provide. So it's interesting seeing this kind of a strategy being pulled up by some of the teams, and if it works out, it's going to be great for them.
Yeah, and actually something that kind of surprised me was the only Sentinel control in this lineup is going to be, or in these listings, is going to be coming from Void on One Turn Kill Club. That deck has just skyrocketed in popularity in the recent days, and I honestly thought that we'd see more of it, but apparently not.
It's maybe one of those things that with the newer patch and you're kind of testing the waters out before actually going all out on that deck, because like you're pointing out, it's raising the ranks, but it's not necessarily one thing that it has been tested enough in my opinion to maybe go full out all out on it. I think that there's still people that feel like there's some decks that you can still pull off and are safer, but I do agree that I'm expecting next week or even in week 6 we begin seeing much more of the Sentinel control of it again, unless something massive goes against it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that is entirely possible.
Yeah, I think we're taking it. We're still waiting a little bit for that, or not? Yeah, we're finally going into the pick and bans. We have, like we pointing out, Mathonical on the first match. We did see the Scion Draven that he was bringing out, but against him we have Grave Trail. We haven't talked much about the potential decks that Grave Trail has brought onto today. We have from him the Fizz Aphelios, the Yumi Pantheon, and the Six Talia, which I am not gonna lie, don't know much about particularly the 6LEA. It's not a deck that I've seen that much. So I'm actually not really knowledgeable on that one. The other two I don't think are super uncommon to see, especially with what I think Refrail may want to do. But to finish off as well, Mathonical, we did talk about the Misfortune, Twisted Fate from him, Scion Draven, and as well the Yumi Pantheon. So a similar deck potentially going to ban away the mirror potential, which I think some players really don't want to play against. But looking at this list, what do you really think both players would not want to play against?
I think if I were in Grave Trail's shoes, I would either ban the Scion Draven or the Yumi Pantheon. Most likely the Scion Draven. I think it's going to give him a lot of problems with just how much aggressive value that deck is going to generate throughout the mid stages of that game, and especially because Aphelios Stun won't will be super effective if there is a large white flame on board for the Yumi Pantheon. Um, m- uh, let's see. The Ziggs Talia is a deck that I have played a little bit of, and we've actually seen it shoot up in popularity in the last couple of days. I was looking at a metric on Twitter, and its play rate went up so high just yesterday from the day before.
Okay, wow. So it's not, but it's been rising, like you're saying. It's a newer deck that we're going to get the chance to see, which I'm excited to see if it actually performs, or we may see it getting banned away. But already knowing the first ban against Methodical, it's the Twisted Fate Misfortune. I would have thought that you would let this up because I think that there's more opportunities to play around this, I think, than the driven
Oh, hello.
playing more against the Draven Scion, and he thinks that that's an easier matchup to go against.
Yeah, must be. The pirate aggro must have just looked like the scarier list at the time, and yeah, I'm curious to see what methodical bans for away from Grave Trail here.
Yeah, thinking about it, I would think you would want to take away the Pantheon Yumi. I feel like with the two decks that are left from Athonical, I feel like you can actually make a good front against the Fizz Aphelios. And obviously, I'm not super knowledgeable about the Six Leah, but I feel like it's a deck that you have to wait a little bit till you can finally get your setup correctly. So I think that for Mathonical, with the two decks that are up, you would want to go against it. Okay, instead of banning the Fizz Aphelios.
Yeah, so it looks like he did ban the Physiophilios here. Makes sense to me. That deck is
Okay.
just going to be control-y. You're going to just slam units on the board. You're going to just remove blockers, units from the aggressive Scion Draven that you see here. And Yeah, that's something that I wouldn't want to see if I were Methodical either.
Okay, that's way that I actually didn't expect. I thought that we were not going to get the mirror matchup because I thought either one of them would ban the Yumi Pantheon. I thought that it would be methodical, but like you're pointing out, the controlly part of the Fist of Phyllis maybe it's something that you really don't want to face against. So maybe we actually do get the chance from mirror matchups. I feel like even though there's a good chance, I don't actually think that I've seen enough mirror matchups even when they are up. So hopefully we do get the chance to see to see the mirror matchup happening. But if it does end up going, if it doesn't pull off into a mirror matchup, which deck do you think either of these players would take first? Because I think that Methodical would like to start with the Draven Scion to maybe get the ball rolling with the aggressiveness and try to close out with the Yumi Pantheon, which I think would work fine against either of these decks as well.
Yeah, if you so one of the weaknesses of the Pantheon Yumi decks and faded decks in general tends to be wide aggression, and if Methodical thinks that Grave Trail is going to play the Pantheon Yumi first round, maybe thinking he's confident in the mirror, then he would probably pick up that Draven Scion just for the go wide and hit hard early game plan and take the win.
Yeah, I feel like that would be overall a right idea to go. And we're jumping, just as we're talking, we're jumping into the game. And potentially we're having the mirror matchup to start things off. So I feel like both players showcasing that they are confident in their in the Pantheon Jumi deck to to play it off at the start of the match. And it's going to be interesting seeing how each of them try to adapt. I think I like the hand that Methodical had at the start, but going to throw away a couple of cards. But instead, I think Brave Trail having a really nice start in the hand.
Yeah, looking at Methodical's hand here, he has a really great start, early curve here. He can attack here and pretty safely know that Grave Trail won't be able to do much into that Pale Cascade. Let's see. The Pantheon hand is a good sign. Not seeing a lot of early faded units or ways to proc faded in the hand of Grave Trail here, which kind of is a little worrying.
Yeah, that's kind of the only thing that I could say that I don't like from the side of Free Trail. But I think that having those or the setup already there in his hand to work out later on can be so ideal for him. Also, already using kind of the Yumi. So I really think that if Free Trail can just survive for a couple more turns, he's going to have such a good power with later on.
Yeah, in mirror matchups in general, I tend to try to just mulligan for the big pieces that you're looking for, like the champions, or if it's a combo deck, your combo pieces, obviously, and
Yep.
the filler cards, the other cards that aren't necessarily going to be your win conditions, aren't necessarily what you want to look at. Although there is a really great early start for Methodical too, having that Yumi on 3.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where you think either I would like to have all my setup for the moment that I can just spike and destroy everything, or be able to get the ball rolling early on, and when the setup comes through, I'm just already so far ahead that it doesn't matter, right? Like that's the kind of thinking that I can see from taking a mirror matchup in both instances. So it's interesting seeing the approach that both are taking
Whoa!
in comparison. But oh,
Taking the attack here with 2 mana up on Methodical, a bit of a sus play to be honest. If you lose that, then you lose a Yumi and you lose one of the procs. So that is definitely going to set Grave Trail back a little bit here.
yeah, quite an impressive attempt, and it's the kind of thing that I can see it being like trying to bait out any kind of defensive spells, which maybe in the long run does work out. But like you're pointing out, with the Yumi being on board with the attack, I feel like it's a riskier bet to try and pull off.
Yeah, and that actually leaves the only 2 options for playing a unit here down to the Pantheon or the Yumi. So obviously playing the Pantheon here just doesn't necessarily feel fantastic. Naked Pantheon on 4.
Yeah, and
He can
like
actually kill the Pantheon here by single combating if he would like to. Elects not to.
I feel like doing it's not necessary to throw the resources so early on, and instead baiting out some defensiveness from the Pantheon. I feel like that's okay for Mythonical. Like you don't actually need to kill it already, but it's actually going to be forced. Okay.
Yeah, he was tapped under, and there was just not going to be much that Grave Trail could do in any hand state there to save that Pantheon.
Yeah, I was actually thinking that it's fine if you don't go all in for the attack, because you can just bait out some resources and then later on kill it. Like, I don't think you're in so much need to force out the trade, but he does get the kill, doesn't lose the Yumi either, just trading for a normal unit and losing a Pantheon that it's the only Pantheon that he got out, that Rayfrail got out at the start. So it's not like he's in a great spot to get his setup out without that Pantheon already.
Right, and Grave Trail has got to be super happy to see that wounded White Flame pop into his hand because his the units that he was going to play were going to be looking a little bit rough there if he didn't have that. It's super scary though to play it here anyway because there's that gigantic Saga Seeker on Methonical's board, and if there's another single combat, it just dies.
Yeah, like it feels like it's all setting up perfectly for Methodical to get so much done in this next attack. And I feel like you have to try and protect this Wyvern. Like you're saying, you have to protect it as hard as you can because it's one of the only cards that you have at this point to try and do something attack wise. Without the Pantheon, with the Pantheon out, with the Yumis on hand, and you have the single combats that you can maybe force as well, but it's looking kind of harsh. This attack from Methodical can be so huge.
Yeah, I don't think that there's really any combination of cards that can be used here to actually kill off this Saga Seeker. So he's just going to have to let it hit face. It is looking, like I said earlier before the game got in, these Pantheon decks are really weak to just the opposing board being wider, and currently Methodical is wider and has larger units, so looking pretty behind here for Grave Trail.
Yeah, and I really like how Methodical has been setting himself up, because we did see that Rithrael had such a nice setup at the start of the game with the hand, but I think Methodical really piloting in correctly, taking the best of trades, forcing out that I don't want to say bad trade, but that interesting trade that made the board of Grave Trail kind of weak, and then also taking away a Yumi from him. So I think that Methodical has just been playing he's playing his game really nicely and just setting for himself so well overall.
He has been, absolutely. And if he had attacked with the Mountain Goat and the smaller Saga Seeker, that would open up the possibility of getting that Fury proc on that White Flame, giving it one attack, and putting it closer to a range of being able to kill that Saga Seeker.
Really attempting to give away a low combat. Maybe using it here to try and get that proc, like you're pointing out.
Yeah, and this is going to kill off that Wounded Flame for Grave Trail, so you're going to have to hope that his top deck or one of his next two draws with that Guiding Touch in hand is going to be a unit that he can buff up and try to get big here. The Saga Seeker is down to 2 health, which puts it within single combat range for most units, but of course it's going to gain +1 health at the end of the turn, and he's got buffs too, so it really is not looking great here.
Like he still has so much trying just keep this unit alive. Like even if you can force something out, it's still so much that you can use to try and keep this unit alive. And it's not a big attacker that Betrayal is able to bring out, or not a big unit that he can try and keep popping up. Like it's not bad, but I'm not sure if that's what you really were hoping for if you're Grave Trail.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And Grave Trail, yeah, like you said, Grave Trail just has so many options in this hand, and he's already so far ahead. He doesn't really need to do anything except for just, play his cards, make sure he gets that Pantheon proc at this turn, and then just pass.
Yeah, I think my Thonical is just so set up to be able to win in the next 2 turns, or in the next turn. So I feel like Grave Trail is still obviously hoping for that top to draw the next card and maybe force something out. But if he's not able to really kill that Yumi buff that unit, it's going to be impossible for him.
Yeah, and it's actually looking extra sad looking back at those early turns that Saga Seeker for Grave Trail died, because he did have
Yeah.
support in hand to possibly work with that if it hadn't died on that turn. So yeah, that shout out to that Pale Cascade and Methonical's hand early.
Yeah, and it's a kind of thing that I can kind of understand, because if you're training for taking away resources from a Thunderbolt, then I sometimes understand it. Like you want to make the enemy's hand as weak as possible, so that later on, if you get a better attack, you can win. But he took the risk. The risk didn't pay off, and he ended up being in this spot because of that. It's the kind of thing that you have to do in some certain situations, especially in mirror matchups, where you know what the enemy wants to do, but they also know what you want to do. So you need to be really, really careful about what you end up going for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think there's a combination of cards here that can save Grave Trail. Unless I am, let me see. Yeah, I don't think so. You could pop the, yep, nope,
Yeah.
that's game.
I was thinking making the utilize forcing the combat to try and take a unit out, but yeah, it just was looking so rough. And taking the first game methodical, such a nice way of playing with the mirror matchup. It's a matchup. It's one of those matchups that you really have to be careful about how you end up affronting because, like I was saying, you know what they want to do, but they know as well. So you really need to know your timings. You really need to know what you can do in which in what moment. And taking risks also means that if you fail, you're going to be in a really, really tough spot. And that's what we ended up seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we're getting into game two here, and it is going to be both players elected to pick a different deck.
Yep.
Well, obviously one of them had to, but it is going to be the Draven Scion and the Talia Ziggs facing off against each other here.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to see what the Talia 6 can do against the Draven Scion, but I feel like even pulling off the two Ravens to start, but I feel like this Draven deck can really just create so much chaos from this kind of deck, so I'm really worried about how Grief Trail will play around it, but if he can do it, if he can pull off this win, maybe with the with a Yumi Pantheon next time, can he try and get momentum to win in the next in the next match?
Yeah, and actually, I think Grave Trail has a pretty good hand for being able to deal with the early game from this methodical deck, but I'm not entirely sure if it's going to be able to handle the late game if he does draw into Scion on turn 7.
Yeah, like you really have to be worried about that Scion. Like it's one of those cards that I don't consider to be like the main point, but it's one of those things that if it's there, you really, really have to take into consideration, and it can turn around a lot of things for you. So it's something that the Great Frail has to certainly look out for in the longer the game goes.
Yeah, and also important to point out here is that Grave Trail did draw 2 Fearsome blockers in his opening hand, which is always going to feel good against decks with those Risen Riders.
Yeah, but I feel going already into turn 3, we're seeing what Methodical is pulling off. 2 Scions and 2 Dravens in hand. He feels like he's already setting up quite nicely to get a lot of his attack done later on. I think that maybe the Focus Sticks can be used quite nicely to also set up to stop Methodical from getting a lot of his board strong, but already forcing the attack with the Draven.
Yeah, and a possible line here is to block with the 3/3, and then on turn 5 you can duplicate the landmark, which will then be at 1 for its countdown, and then on turn 6 you're going to pop out 2 5/3 Fearsomes. So that'll be really great actually for board presence in matching this Scion deck.
Yeah, like that's kind of how
Ooh.
you. That's kind of before we continue. That's kind of how you really want to force it because if you can at least keep up in numbers with the Draven Scion board presence, then it's going to be quite nicely for your setup later on as well.
Yeah, Grave Trail has not gotten a ton of chip damage early, but neither has Methodical.
Yeah.
Usually a great thing that this deck can do is just get you down to 8 or 9 health, and then you can't do anything about Ziggs just burning you down at the end of the game there to finish you off. But if he doesn't get low, then Ziggs isn't going to really be able to do his thing.
Yeah, it's kind of funny to point it out like this, but it's quite literally a ticking bomb, like six is. It's just ticking bomb waiting for you to die, and it's important to get those uh, small damage bits. There was a better word, but I kind of forgot, so I'll just call it that. Small damage bits that you deal your opponent, and if you're not doing that early on, it's not going to be that prevalent later on as well, especially with
Yeah,
these
right.
decks.
And looks like going to be going for the Talia on the landmark, I'm going to guess. Oh, actually, yeah, drawing that 1-drop probably did change the line here a little bit. So he can just have an entirely wide board after this attack. This board looks like it can deal with Methonical's board fantastically.
Yeah, quite nice. Really nice decision there to try and pump up the numbers for his board. Like you're pointing out, really good board to try and defend from this attack from Athonical. And I feel like also setting up quite nicely for a potential good attack next turn for Great Trail as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And if Grave Trail's health never dips below 20, then Scion can attack into your 5/4 and 2/4s all you want. It's not going to really get you that low.
Time for the moneymakers.
Yeah, it's an important point to keep in mind the lack of attacking that Methodical has been able to pull off. Although forcing the all-on attack, I feel like you have to try and stop this Ribbon as hard as you can. But there's barely any units that can really make a front to him. So I feel like you just let him attack. Yeah,
Yeah, I
unless you
think
want
you
to
just let
sacrifice
Draven hit.
the. Yeah,
Sorry.
I think that's fine. No, I was just going to say unless you want to sacrifice something here, like I think you don't want to sacrifice at all your six. So I feel like you just let it attack.
Yeah, so after this attack resolves, we're probably going to see that Yordle Chemist get dropped, and that will be the final, I believe, landmark proc to level this Ziggs too.
Yeah, putting the six into such a good spot already, and we're not yet at level 7, which I think for Brief Trail and for Mathonical it's not necessarily bad, but getting that 6 level up so early on, it's going to
I
be quite
got a
nice for Brief
short
Trail.
fuse.
Yeah, it will. And let's see here. Okay, just getting a little bit more of that face damage on the Draven. That makes
Yeah.
sense. There's no way to really stop that from happening. Ooh, actually going to be leveling the Draven here.
Quite a nice choice by Mathonical, if I'm honest. I really like the getting the level up.
Yeah, and also gives you 2 axes in hand, which can be discard fodder for things like the 3 Get Exciteds that are in this deck. It can proc, I think that there's a 1 of the 5 mana card that you discard to keep the strongest unit alive. I'm blanking on the name right now, somehow.
So it's fine. It happens to me quite a bit, so it's fine. That's the thing with casts.
Yes. Okay, and Ancient Hourglass here. Not looking like it's going to be able to do too much. You could actually Ancient Hourglass Ziggs, copy it with Talia, and then have 2 Ziggs on board. That would double up on the burn for every landmark that got procced.
It would be a nice way to try and put Methodical on a timer to make it so that uh, he cannot not be aggressive. I was trying to think of a better way of saying it, but I think that explains what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, oh, it actually looks like, I didn't think, looks like Grave Trail is going to be going for it. This is going to be really interesting to see.
Yeah, I'm forcing such a momentum play, in my opinion, onto Methodical. Great Trail really will force things out with this. And if Betrayal is able to pull this off at the end, like forcing it really heavily on Methodical, I can see him just making the game be in such a tough spot for Methodical in the next 3 turns.
Yeah, and the fact that Talia levels off of this too means that he gets an attack here. He's either going to be taking a lot of damage to face, or he's just going to be killing one of those units from Methodical and just really trading down.
Yeah, and as Methodical, you really don't want to sacrifice much of your damage early on, either.
Right. The saving grace here for Methodical is that he is running a very burn-heavy version of this list. So if his board dies, it's not the end of the world. He can still pull through.
Yeah, that is true. That like you're bringing out, that is one of the most important saving graces for Methodical. But
It looks
I
like
really like. Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah, it just looks like taking pretty standard blocks here. He's tapped under, so he's not going to be able to really threaten this Draven, even though he is blocking with it. So only taking 2 damage to face on this attack, but clearing out 2 of the units on board.
Yeah, that like taken away, it's still fine. And if you're able to put this Draven on a lower health, like there's still 2 Poke Sticks, which you can end up using to kill this Draven later on as well. If there's nothing buffing him up.
Yeah, and I actually think that when these Ziggs unpop next turn, I think that's just 6 damage to face instantly. If the first Ziggs... actually, I don't know. I think Ziggs pops off of his own Hourglass. I don't know if that'll actually cause the damage, but it's at least going to be 4 damage here.
Yeah, and it can put Methodical into such a tough spot, certainly. I'm kind of interested what if Methodical can make a huge attack next turn before something like really huge attacks his Nexus. Because he does have the Signing Hand and he has a lot of spinning axes to try and buff up the Draven as well.
Yeah, just shooting this Mystic Shot at face here, just trying to make sure that he can get as much of this damage in as possible before these Ziggs pop. I'm curious to see what happens here. And Grave Trail does have 2 Pokesticks in hand too, which are just a really great card, a great utility card to kill this Draven, to refill the hand, to face damage, anything this deck needs right now.
Yeah, like that would be so good. Like I'm pretty curious if Betrayal would just use the the Pokestick to try and get this Draven out, especially because now he cannot resummon it this turn with the Scion. Like, if you take out the Draven, he has to wait one more turn to be able to pull off another Draven.
Yeah, absolutely. And drawing into the right of the Arcane here, that is going to be 4 damage to face and killing, or 5
Ooh.
damage to face and killing the Draven here. I forgot it was the bomb.
Yep.
So that, along with the Pokesticks, is going to bring Methodical down fairly low. That's at least 7 damage in hand right now.
Yeah, with the Pokesticks, like, that is so much damage to take at this turn, and now it's just like we pointed out, setting up so well for the six trying to burn down on your Nexus.
Yeah, and if Methodical doesn't draw more burn here, the open attack here for Grave Trail is actually looking really scary. And the fact that the Whirling Death in hand was actually just a Draven, so there's not even really going to be a way to react to an open attack here from Grave Trail.
Yeah, like he really has to make this attack be as strong as possible. Like, that's it.
Yeah, all of these axes in hand are going to help do that, but Talia having 6 health and Grave Trail being willing to just sacrifice Talia like that, I don't think Methodical is going to get into lethal range this turn or next turn, possibly.
So I'm kind of curious. So watching what potentially Methodical can do in this turn, I don't expect it to be a strong enough attack to be able to take down the Nexus. But is there anything that he can pull off from the top of stack to try and clear out something, or try and survive a huge attack in the next turn?
Well, Roar of the Slayer is going to be good here. It will kill one of the Ziggs if Grave Trail does not top deck a deny. So that'll be good, but yeah, actually, that stun is a pretty great top deck here, to be able to keep that Scion in check if it does go into 2 rounds from now.
Yeah, like, it's looking like there's enough for Grave Trail to try and pull it off in the next turn. Which I think for Mythonical, obviously, it's the worrying part. I think that you shouldn't be afraid of using the stake here. Like, I feel like you go for the damage, yeah, and you get an extra draw, which I feel for Grave Trail would be ideal as well.
Yeah, and ooh, that's also an excellent draw. That is gonna make it so that every single time, if he puts those Roiling Sands down, every unit that Methodical plays is just gonna deal 4 damage to his own Nexus. So he can no longer afford to play a unit.
He got it's so damage. He has to sacrifice the Scion here. He has a
Yeah,
think
he was
has a
forced into open
potential.
attacking because he
Yeah.
knows that the Decimate is in Methodical's deck. So he couldn't give him an opportunity there.
Yeah, like, this would be 100% the way to decide it.
Oh, and because Scion is dying, it summons Scion Returned, which is gonna pop it's gonna pop the Roiling Sands and cause more burn to face.
It's going to be so close.
Unless the way Methodical wins this game is by top decking burn and by praying that Grave Trail does not have any right in this deck. Or in his hand, sorry. Excuse me.
There goes the buff on the Scion. Gets time back.
Yeah, and Scion's only going to... Okay. Yeah, Scion is going to actually be dealing 4 damage to face here, and the Decimate will clean it up. So,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Methodical. Yeah, although there's no, I think. Yeah, I think Methodical should win here.
incredibly close game, especially with the double Ziggs pull. And Methodical, it is looking like going to be taking the 2-0 here.
Between Talia. Yeah, I know. They think, yeah,
Yep,
it's
that's a
that.
good game.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe there was something there, but yeah, like you pointed out, really close game by Methodical and Rift Trail. Give it to credit to Rift Trail because he pulled off that great play with the 6, like you're pointing out. It was the play that we were hinting on. We not typically do we see so much that happens that we hint on and it's been pulled off, but it was the play that almost puts Rift Trail onto the winning spot. And I feel like he played that so well in so many instances. He pulled off the correct plays at the right time. The top decks were quite nice as well, and he made the good use of it. Like, I feel like the only way that Griff Trail can play that better is if he has another potential damage dealer to try and take the game before that. Like that's the only
Yeah.
thing that I can think for Great Trail. But Mathonical takes it. Great game by him. Great match overall. A 2-0 and really putting himself out there in those two games.
Yeah, absolutely. And he put himself in a really good position too. That hourglass wasn't going to be probably getting much use in that matchup outside of using it aggressively. And that is Talia decks are one of the only decks that can use that hourglass aggressively like that. And it has pretty great results.
Yep, it almost pulled off the win and potentially the comeback from Graves Trail, but Mathonical does take the 2-0, putting, I feel like, if I'm not wrong, it's a team on a 1-0, and I think the other matches are yet, at least one of them is yet to start, and the others should be going on. I would like to know if we are going to jump into the next one, into the next match, or if we know the results from the next one.
Yeah, me too. I would be curious to know that too.
Okay,
Okay.
perfect. So we may be jumping into the next match, talking a little bit maybe more about what we just saw from Athonical and Grave Trail to maybe get some closing statements of or something that you really were impressed with watching both of them play.
Yeah, and in round one or in game one, you saw the really aggressive attack from the Saga Seeker by Grave Trail into
Yep.
Methodical, and that is just like a confidence play. That's I'm going to attack, you don't have it, and that can like just shift the entire matchup on whether or not he has a Sharp Sight or Pale Cascade in hand.
Yep.
So that was just a risky, bold play early that didn't pay off, and then he didn't draw any of those faded targets, and it was just unfortunate draws from there. And Methodical didn't really make any mistakes in that first match, nor the second match. It was really clean game.
Yeah, you really have to like put the credit onto Methodical because it's not necessarily that Great Trail makes some massive blunders. Is that Methodical answered to almost anything that Great Trail wanted to pull off, and even pulled off his own plays in a great manner that were really hard to answer back. So he just played like he needed to, and at the end is taking the win. Like there's nothing more that I think you can say for that because Methodical just played that good
Yeah,
in
it
this
was
matchup.
great gameplay out of Methodical in both games. It was that was one of it was a very clean Yumi Pantheon game, and it was a very clean
Yeah.
Draven Scion game all the way through.
Yeah, and you can really kind of see why these teams are. I don't want to say it's the reason why these teams are in the spots that they are, but it's certainly showing the potential of the teams and the players, right? Like it's a good indicator of what we can expect out of Jordan and Arms that is so high up in the Group One table. And one turn kill club that maybe hasn't had the best of luck in some of their matches, or maybe doesn't have the best of playing I don't want to say play so bad. The best of ways of playing so that they can take some of these wins because even they are 2-4, so they have been able to win, but they haven't been able to win enough, which is the problem, right? Okay,
Okay, and
so oh,
you can go for it.
oh okay, yeah. So we're going to jump into Void against Kesuibi. Kasui, yeah, that Kesuibi, but we're not sure on the game they are on. We're just going to jump in to game one. Or is it just what we're seeing? Okay, yeah. Later on, I'll tell you what game we're on, but already in quite a bit.
Yeah, jumped into a Lux Flip and Aldous Pharos on board. Both players, it is past turn 10, I'm assuming, or at turn 10. We are in a late stage of this game. That Aldous Pharos is dealing 4 to face. Okay. Um, yeah, and this is that Sentinel control deck that I had brought up earlier that I said I was surprised we didn't see more of in the lists.
Yeah, but it seems like it's doing quite well. Like you're pointing out, already so late into the game, we have so much power that both teams can pull off, or both players can pull off. And I'm kind of interested in seeing what Kazuibi is going to do to try and answer this Pharaoh because it's looking strong, and he has another one in hand.
Yeah, notably, you can see the Ruination in hand too for Void, and the Jace Lux is not going to have a way to answer that, but you're not going to want to lead with it yet. Yep, okay, starting out with I forget what that card is called, the Drain 5. Wow, I'm blanking on that card name. But that'll take care of that Jace pretty quickly, and okay, so it looks like he pulled Assembly Line. with how did it get discounted to 5?
Oh, my prize us. Kind of you to meet me.
Can't decline an invitation from Albus
I mean, like,
Pharos.
it's still a good enough attack from Kasuibi in this round, even without the Jace, so it's going to put a little bit of damage, not enough that it should worry Void, and with the Jace on hand as well, now that he was able to pull it up into the field, it's just such a strong potential attack in the next turn for Void.
Yeah, absolutely. And he does have a second Albus Pharos in hand, which, as of that last spellcast, is going to be dealing 5 to face here if it doesn't get answered immediately. And I don't think that there's going to be a way to answer that immediately in the hand of Kazuibi.
You dropped something.
Yeah, he does get a single attack to try and maybe force the Pharaoh into a bad spot, but it's
Not going to be
not
leading with the
working.
Pharos here.
Yeah.
Looks like he is going to be going for a Shock Blast, probably just burning the face down here.
So that would that be the like? I feel like you going for the Pharaoh wouldn't be that bad if I'm honest. Like, you just put down the Pharaoh, you threaten all the potential damage that you may be feeling that you may get onto Kasuibi, and if you can get some resources out of him, wouldn't be a bad situation to be in.
Yeah, it makes me think that Void is probably looking to close out this game. No healing in the deck of any version of Lux Jace. So, yeah, he could just
alright,
cast
I can wait.
Shock Blast here, deal 6 to face, and know that that's just going to be... That is damage that is going to stick.
Yeah, they can just potentially win you the game, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. If he's able to cast... I mean, 1 Shock Blast this turn, 1 Shock Blast
that
next
again.
would end the game. But it looks like he's just going to take care of the board here, actually.
But interesting that that he's trying to clear up the board. A single combat coming through, so trying to get rid of that Jace, which I quite like. Even if you lose your part of your board, like I like taking care of the Jace because that Jace could have been a little bit more problematic later on, especially if you're able to get that chip damage onto the deck, or not chip damage, but the damage onto the Nexus. I mean.
Yeah, it definitely could have. And we have second Jace in hand here, or at least second. I guess we don't know at this point in the game. There is another Jace in hand, and if there is a third in the deck still, that Albus Pharos can draw it again. So there's going to be a lot of Jaces for Kazuibi to deal with this game here. But he does top deck the leveled Lux.
Yeah, and I feel really important topic to pull up at this point because without the Jace, like it's really important to have that Lux to be able to deal that amount, a good amount of damage onto the Nexus and forcing an attack already as well.
Yeah, and just really safe. Kazuibi's trying to commit as little as possible here, and because he knows that he's behind at this point in the game. He has less cards in hand, and Void is playing a really, really control-y deck. He knows there's probably a Ruination in hand, and yeah, he just does not want to commit these resources before he has to, but it looks like time is just slowly ticking down for him.
Yeah, like you bring a really important point. Knowing about the Ruination or the potential that you can just destroy your resources immediately, it's quite important because at this point in the match, where one mistake can really just determine the outcome essentially because of how late we are, can be really detrimental. But it does mean that the Pharaoh goes down in this turn and can be such a huge attack against Kazuibi.
Yeah, this
Also
Pharos
looks-
is going to deal a lot of damage here. I think if I was counting correctly, it might deal 7 to face, which is not going to be able to be stopped by Kazuibi.
Yeah, it's going to be a good amount of damage that, like you pointed out previously, will stick onto the Nexus. So, can be a really game-defining moment if Kazuibi is not able to do something to defend himself here.
Interesting. He's elected to pass and see what Kazuibi is going to play next, and looked like Kazuibi had loaded up the 5 mana
Yep.
assembly line card.
They're going to bait each other out until one goes for a play here. Because I feel like Kazuibi, like Boyd, feels like it's more beneficial for him to try and bait out something than for Kazuibi.
Yeah, absolutely. And he has, in these next turns, I mean, he can just play Aloof Travelers, and that's basically just a... Okay. He's attacking with Albus Pharos here,
Not on my work
dealing
site,
6
Bob.
damage on that. I was off by 1 when I was counting.
It's mad. Like one thing that I've come to realize from the streams on Runeterra, wherever I'm on, is that math is a hard thing. So we don't worry about that. It's fine.
Yeah, math is hard for sure. But I can definitely count down from 5, and it looks like that's what Kazuibi is going to be doing here. There's just so much control in this hand for Void here. He's going to be able to match the board presence of Kazuibi here, and if he is able to keep this Albus Pharos alive, he's just going to be smacking it 2 turns from now too, and just dealing more face damage.
Yeah, like Kazuibi trying really to get some of that board presence down, like you pointed out, with the fact that Void pushed it on to such a good spot, but just feels like it's going to be so hard for Kazuibi, although trying to use the acceleration gate, trying both of their remembers, and another final spark, which maybe can put him in a good spot. Oh, okay.
Yep, and now the Ruination gets to show why it is in this deck. It is just gonna... Oop, maybe not. I would... what would he be afraid of here? Because if he wouldn't cast Ruination here, it would be because he thinks that there might be another threat in Kazuibi's hand to play after the Ruination. But I'm not quite sure what he would be afraid of at 5 mana. Another Lux
Yeah,
is...
like I feel like that's the most important thing. Like I'm trying to think what you would be afraid of, but particularly at 5 mana at this point, what really kind of scare you to not throw the Ruination, right?
There would be probably just Jace or Lux, and depending on what point of the game we're in and how many of those we've already seen, those might be slim. So, yeah, electing to just use the Aloof instead, just to try to cycle some of the value tools out of Kasuibi's hand, discarding the Shock Blast of an important board control tool, especially with Lux on board.
The thing is that with a good enough amount of damage here, even if you don't get the kill, like you can threaten that Lux, that final spark, try and maybe pull off the game with that.
Just kill me.
Yeah, absolutely. Deciding whether or not to block with Albus Pharos here. Pharos is going to survive this final spark, but if Kazuibi had any burn in hand, Pharos would be dead to this. So this is probably Void just deciding whether or not trying to read the hand and see whether or not there's a Mystic Shot or something in hand currently.
Like yeah, like one thing or a thing that Kasuibi's deck does have is that potential burn into the Nexus, right? Like you do have to be careful about what comes out that can just directly attack your Nexus, and that's what you need to be careful about.
Yeah, if this Pharos does not block, then there is a rally in Kazuibi's hand, though, and that, along with the acceleration gate, is most likely going to close out this game. If he would have ruinated last turn, he would have been in a much better spot here, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's a play, yeah.
Yeah, just rally, and I don't... Let me see, he can play Elise, and then, yeah, that's still perfect lethal, especially with the Overwhelm in hand. Mystic Shot coming out to retaliate.
Try and protect, but I think, yeah, I think even with that, it's enough.
Yeah, that's game. Don't know which game, but that is game, absolutely.
Yeah, quite a nice move by Kasuibi, and it's one of those situations where maybe you respect a little bit too much the potential from the opponent, which in most instances you kind of have to do. But if you're able to play to just force the play out of the opponent, not holding it for a little bit too long, you would have been able to play. It's a tough mind game that I feel a lot of games do have, and it happens sometimes that you're on the winning side of that mind game, and sometimes you're on the losing side. So credit to Kasuibi. To Boyd, it was really close. It looked like he could have been able to pull it off, but it's an unlucky situation for him.
Yeah, that was absolutely a game of inches. If the rally was not in hand there for Kazuibi, then Void had basically a guaranteed game there, especially with the Ruination in hand. If Kazuibi had continued to play scary threats, then you could have just dealt with those. So unfortunate, he didn't elect to use that, but it's an understandable choice to go for Aloof instead.
Yeah, like it's not like it's an easy situation to say we should pull off the ruination or anything like that, right? Like you have to think about what the threats are on the enemy, and even though we did say that with 5 mana it's kind of hard to see a huge threat that can be pulled off out of Kasuibi, it's still a threat that can happen. So you have to be able to think about those situations and be sure what you can do to get out of those situations. So I feel like even if the ruination was not used, maybe there was a better chance to use something else, and even then, it just wasn't enough. So credit to Kasuibi. Boyd, if this was the first game, there's still a second chance. If not, it's still credit to Boyd for almost being able to pull it off. And credit to Kasuibi once again, because if this wasn't the first game, I'm still waiting on confirmation of that, but this was the second game or the third game for one of them to win, then Yordles in Arms would have been already 2-0 up because of the previous win that they got.
Yeah, absolutely. It was yeah, I wasn't trying to take anything away from Kasuibi there.
Yeah, no,
Kasuibi played super well. With that hand, that was absolutely the line. Buffing the board into rally, that was uh it was kind of cosplaying Sivir Demacia there. Or yeah, with the whole quick attack board into rally.
yeah, that's a reference that I can remember quite well in hearing in previously Runeterra, now Aegis. So it hits quite well to heart. But I feel like since we haven't heard anything, like, do we know about the last matchup that should be starting soon with Apoxa?
Still awaiting
Okay,
confirmation on that, it looks like.
yeah, we're still waiting for the last potential match, because the last match from this or the last match from this series, yeah, was rescheduled a little bit later. So there, we still have a potential full match to see from this from the series, which should be exciting. It should be between Apoxa and, if I'm not wrong, Slay. So let's just look a little bit about their potential decks that they are bringing here, and what we may see from them, what we may get banned, because we have from Slay the Cillian Echo, the Fizz Udyr that we highlighted, and also the Kaylin Ezreal. And then from Apoxa, we have the Yumi Pantheon Taric, the Draven Sion, and the Six Aaliyah. So we have quite a good mix of decks to see, and quite a few interesting ones as well.
Yeah, interestingly, Apoxa has the only Yumi Pantheon lineup out of the, I believe, three between the teams that is running Taric. So that is exciting to see. And Slay is the only Zillion Echo and the only Fizz Udyr. So super interesting lineup and super interesting matchup between those two players potentially.
Yeah, should be quite interesting to see. Before we continue going on them, I think we do have the update from Boyd. It's 2-1 in favor of Kasuibi, so they do get the 2-0 advantage in the series. We're just missing the last match, but it's 2-0 already for the side of Yordles and Arms. Quite nicely by them. Could have been a closer matchup between Kasuibi and Boyd, but still we're just missing that last one. And I think we can just keep on going until we get notification about their potential start. So, like you pointed out, some good. Oh, actually, we do get the chance to go for a small break. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back really soon. And yeah, don't go anywhere. Woo! We're back. I don't know if those claps were heard, but we're back, and that's what matters. We are going into the next series, so let's forget a little bit about the previous ones. Now we're moving into the next one, which is Open Pass, if I'm not wrong, against IC Gaming Team A for Group 3. Should be an interesting matchup as well. I kind of want to see the standings just to see where each of them are right now so that we can either talk good about one team or not. But not really. But both are quite close in the standings, actually. Open Pass having one extra win compared to IC Gaming A, which could then set up for IC Gaming if they take this match to move higher up in the standings and set themselves up for a potential playoffs later on. So quite an interesting matchup and maybe an impactful matchup for the standings later on as well.
Yeah, for sure. Looking at these lineups too across the board, looking like a little bit more diversity. I'm seeing Azir Aurelias, I'm seeing Viego Sharimas, Victor Udyr. It's just there's a lot of interesting decks here.
Yeah, I feel like there's been quite a nice outcome in the sense of trying to take some new decks that we potentially haven't seen, or maybe not new decks, but decks that seem a little bit more obscure compared to what in the previous wins may have been bringing on. So I'm quite glad that we're getting so much variety in this match, in this series, and in the previous series as well. These two teams are going to be bringing some really interesting deck archetypes like you're bringing up, and we have a couple of decks that I feel like are going to be quite nice to see. Already, we're going to show you the first highlighted deck out of IZ Gaming Team A. From Wade, we have the Victor Rudier, which you were going a little bit much more in depth on what it has.
Yeah, this deck is super interesting. Three Starlit Seers, as well as the Udyr and Victor generating spells that are either starting out at 0 mana or dropping down to 0 mana, just gives you so much value because Starlit Seer has always been interesting in the past, but having a large unit hasn't necessarily mattered a ton in throughout different metas in this game. But with Udyr giving you a very, very easy and reliable way to grant Overwhelm, as well as Hiera Alcior, it changes the game and makes that a lot scarier.
Yeah, it feels for me this kind of deck kind of reminds me, or at least I tried to make a parallel with what was the Zoe Listen of a couple of patches ago, right? Where it's not necessarily, well, maybe not necessarily in the sense that you build such a huge carry or a super strong carry with a lot of numbers, but it just feels like it's impossible to kill the Listen right at that point. So with Dudir, I feel like it's kind of the same thing that you're trying to do with this deck, which should be interesting to see, especially if he can get not only the Udyr buffed up, but the Victor as well to get those augments and just get so much damage down.
Yeah, and there's also the Neandroid. He's running three of those, which with all the generated spells from Ballistic Bot, Financier, Volpine Wanderer, Udyr Victor, etc. that can get very big, not even if you're not buffing it, just off of augment alone. So multiple different ways to win the game here from this deck. It's a really interesting build, and I'm excited to see it in action.
Yep, I hope that we actually get to see it because sometimes these kinds of effects, like we said in the previous series, can be taken away just because of how difficult it may be to go against them, or maybe you just don't have enough experience going against them, which ends up just taking the opportunity to see this deck in action. But going from this deck to the next one, we get from Open Paths instead, we have from Ledge 55 the Fizz Aphelios, which it's a deck that we couldn't see in action in the previous series. There was an opportunity, but we couldn't see it in action. But this Fizz Aphelios deck seems really interesting to be able to pull off. You have a lot of cards that you want to try and pull off, or not necessarily drawing, but just trying to get some of those cards drawn out or pull off, and then try and get these Aphelios to be as strong as possible. You also have the face to kind of create that chaos in the mix of Aphelios being your kind of strong point of the deck, but you have that Fizz there to also allow you to get a lot done, which I kind of like from this Fizz Aphelios deck.
Yeah, and you're running a lot of 1 mana or 2 mana cards here to protect that Fizz, and the classic combo with this deck is to generate value with Aphelios, stabilize the game, and then end the game with a Fizz with a double attack elusive from Papercraft Dragon, which he's only running one of in the main deck, but remember you can pull that from the Phase Sprout, and it will have +1/+1. And you're also having 1 damage spells here coming out from the Yordle Squire when you play it. So it's a really reliable deck that can save Fizz, and it's a value monster. I've seen this deck on ladder many times, and it always is. It puts up a good fight into most
Yeah,
matchups.
yeah, it feels like it's a deck, or at least from what I try to make it think as, it feels like it's a deck that you can never give for death because there can always find kind of an avenue to try and make something happen. Which I think for a deck it's super valuable because even if it's not necessarily the strongest or the most apparent meta kind of deck, like it gives you always a fighting chance to try and pull something off later on or at any point in the game, which I think that you have to value a lot in a deck, and if you can play it quite correctly, I think that this can be such a dangerous deck to go against. That's, I think, potentially why we saw it banned in the previous series as well.
Yep, and the stuns from Aphelios, as well as the Bandle's trademark playing a card and then putting another card in your hand, is just going to let you outgrind a lot of those matchups as the game goes on, too.
Yep, it just feels so good to play all around, which is certainly going to be quite great. I think, yeah, we're jumping into the pick and ban for the first matchup that we're going to get in tonight's series, and it's going to be Wade, the picture Udyr deck that we highlighted with, apart from that, the Action Silver Warlords and the Viego as well. And then we have Chiron the Mage from Open Pass. I kind of remember, I pretty sure we saw him in the first season, so I'm glad to see him back again into the season with the Trundle Tryndamere deck. We have the Talia 6 once again, and then Cillian Azir Serath, which is a deck that I haven't seen quite much, so I'm quite interested in seeing what he does.
Yep, that deck is just going to be a similar mono Shurima deck, but it is running Zillion just so that you can have a little bit more guaranteed landmark ratio in your deck, as well as you can wipe out some wider boards. It draws you into your champions a little better, and it's just kind of a nice utility. I'm pretty sure Zillion's a one of in that deck. I'm not um, entirely sure of this version, but I think it's a one of. And yeah, he's also has the Feel the Rush deck too, and this looks like an interesting matchup for sure. I'm not sure what I would ban in this situation.
Yeah, it feels like both teams or both players can have an interesting deck to run on with, even if one of the others is banned off. Also to add to this, because it's better late than never, and I forgot. Thank you to Rinter AR for allowing us to show the highlighting decks and be able to check them out whenever you can. But going back into the match, like we were saying with the decks, there's a good opportunity for each deck to showcase something really nicely against the opponent's deck. And even if you one is taken away, like I feel like there's good enough answers in them as well. I feel like maybe we don't get to see. I feel like you take away the Udyr Victor because I feel like it can be a really huge threat for Chiron, and I think that Trundle Tryndamere would be the option for Wade because I feel like the attacks from this deck can be quite huge to deal with. Oh, it's
Yeah, for
instead the
sure.
Seer.
bans away the inevitability of the Sun Disk flip deck. That seems like a fine option, absolutely. That deck is a menace. That deck has been super powerful even through the nerf that we saw this last patch, so it's understandable that Wait would want to ban that away.
Kind of like I kind of like the way to phrase it, the inevitability of that deck. So taking it away, and now it is inevitable. Wait, is that a word? Maybe. But with that, Viego also taking away, so leaving out the Warlords and the Victor Uther. The Viego, I feel like it's such a deck that feels so powerful, maybe that you really don't simply want to go against it, especially if the opponent can play it to a good enough potential. So I feel like I can understand the Viego option, but it does mean that we're going to get the Victor Uther. I think the first highlighted deck that we're going to get on stream. So I'm excited to see how does perform. How does it perform? And like I asked you in the previous series, I'm kind of interested. Which deck do you think either player would try to play first, and which would they like to play second to maybe set up for that second deck?
So I am probably not an expert on strategy here, but as a personal choice, whenever I play a tournament or a best of three in general, I always like to come out swinging with the more aggressive deck. I think it just sets a good, confident tone for the series. So if I were Kyron, I would play the Ziggs Talia again here. It's just a nice, solid deck in the meta currently. Although Feel the Rush is, I think, maybe the highest performing deck this patch. I think it has a bad matchup into the Sivir Akshan though, so might not want to open with that.
Yeah, it can be potentially risky. I feel like Action Sivir can have such a nice impact again in either of these matchups because of what the idea is to get those units to be as strong enough as possible to just get one huge attack, which I think maybe the Field of Rush can kind of answer, but at the same time can be really risky. Like it's trying to play on a knife's edge consistently. So I can see a bit riskier going against the severe action. But I also think that if you can take out this deck, it can be an easier time going forward as well. And it's going to be the Victor Udyr from Wade, and it's going to be from Karen the Mage to Talia 6.
Yeah, excellent starting hand here for both players actually. But Wait has the Starlit Seer has two of the different augment value generation cards and is going to be able to start buffing up units in that deck here pretty quickly. Notably, this Udyr deck is running Elixir of Iron, which we don't always see in Freljord decks anymore due to power creep, but it being a 1 mana way to possibly save a Starlit Seer and cause another spell proc in the same round to buff the same unit is super valuable here.
It could be a way to try and dissuade some of the most of the attacks later on, which can be quite interesting to see if it does end up being pulled off. We're seeing here the potential pick from the side of Karen the Mage, which I think, well, with a 6 in hand, I think that you can just take the landmark, right?
Yeah, you can take the landmark here, which is, I think probably what I would pick. It is just going to give you a more option of drawing into better cards later, and you probably don't need a redundant Ziggs or another one of those endless devouts in hand.
Yeah, and already I quite like the opening that Karen the Mage has right now. Not only the hand, but in the board. Like the board looks quite promising, and with the 6 later on, like this can be quite a good impactful board.
Oh yeah, it's incredibly aggressive here, and he already has 3 landmarks down, which are gonna all be counted down within 2 turns here. So that Ziggs flip is gonna happen fast potentially.
Yep. It's not something that we typically like. Even in the previous series when we saw the 6 Talia, like it took a little bit for at least the 6 to get that flip, but Sword on can be quite nice to have, especially because we do see the picture in hand for Wade, but we're not seeing the stances going down or the Udyr at that, so can be much riskier.
Yeah, and just gonna take some just block it down here, value blocks, keep that Starlit Seer alive, and then probably gonna be looking to drop Victor next turn and start buffing up that deck with that Seer.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be, I think, for Wade, certainly the better way to try and pull off some of the things. We see the landmark popping up for Karen the Mage, but like you're pointing out, we see the picture coming down. We have a lot of value in hand as well. I think for Wade, there's a lot of good enough spells to try and pull off. So I can see him trying to get some chip going, for at least for now.
Yeah, you are gonna want to start generating that value though, because if we wait too long here, this Ziggs is gonna flip, and you're just gonna start generating value and burn with those landmarks, and the game is just going to eventually end due to Wait's health hitting 0. So you're gonna want to. Ooh, he rolled lifesteal on Victor for that first one, which is noticeably impactful because you can buff Victor up so much with the stances here that he can just be a large, unbreakable wall of lifesteal.
Yeah, something that we just try and keep you there consistently, and it does mean that Karen the Mage does need to now get the 6 and the landmark damage down. Like, you need that burn to be able to pull up a lot of damage, because like you're bringing out with the Victor, he just keeps getting stronger. He has life steal, he has a lot of body already, and if he doesn't die, that's going to be quite nice for Wade.
Yeah, absolutely. And just dropping the ballistic bot down here, you're just wanting to get your value tools on board. And if he gets the other bot down as well, then every turn you're just getting 3 procs for the Starlit Seer for 2 mana, and that is just fantastic, especially when you have access to that overwhelm, like was mentioned earlier in the cast.
Yeah, and now we see the stance being pulled off by the side of Wade, which I quite like that he's buffing up the Victor. Like, I like that he's adding onto the Victor, which is quite great, and I like that the stance also goes already to try and keep that Udyr level up, even though he hasn't appeared yet.
Yeah, for sure. I don't believe there are gonna be many ways to kill this Victor if it gets buffed up much more. I think the best opportunity would be to try and right it this turn, but as we can see, there is protection in hand for that Victor, so I don't think it's going to be going down. I think it's going to be healing back up and just turning into more of a menace. The Talia flip, though, especially with the Talia on Preservarium, is basically just going to be Talia, and then you draw 2, and you get another landmark proc. This Ziggs is going to be flipped. This Ziggs is probably going to be coming down and starting to burn, but not sure if it's going to be able to work its way through this Victor lifesteal.
Like, it feels like, even though it's not necessarily a bad thing to throw the 6 later on, right? Like, it may feel a little bit later because of how the Victor is setting up to be. Like, obviously, Victor is still not the strongest. He still needs to level up, obviously, and he still can get to an even stronger point. But it's ramping up, and that's going to be a risky situation if the 6 cannot do something when he goes down.
Yeah, absolutely, and rolling Challenger here as well, so you can just take away the threats. You could buff up your health and kill the Talia next round, and just the lifesteal roll was such a great roll for this deck on the first Victor proc here. It's kind of astounding, actually.
Yeah, like, you have to play around with those kind of things, and when you're against it, like, you have to be able to manage it. So props to, I feel like if Kyron can do it, it would be massive props to him. And Wade has to be able to also balance it around. He will get a lot of value once again. He's still not getting the Udyr, which I think can be a bit problematic if he doesn't get it soon enough. But I feel with the state of the board that is right now, with the cards that he has been able to put down and the units that he has, I think that he's still in a good enough spot, even if the 6 does come down this time.
Yeah, and incredible news too is that you don't actually have to wait to roll Overwhelm on the Victor. You can just give it to Victor. So if Victor, for example, were to roll Quick Attack, or then you can just give him Overwhelm, and that's basically going to be game end. I don't really see a way unless he gets quicksanded. But if he does get quicksanded, he has buffs in hand at burst speed to keep that Victor alive through it. So it is looking a little grim. Leveled Talia going for the attack here. Probably just going to get blocked down. There's a lot of board value for weight here, and yeah, just going to go ahead and see what happens.
Yeah, like, there's enough throwaway units that you can just send off. Like, it's just for Wade. He doesn't really need to keep those units in place, which it's sometimes kind of not the case. Like, sometimes you really value having the units in place, but this time around, Wade really doesn't need almost any of those. Like, with the Victor and another one, like, he can just keep himself in a good enough spot. He does not block a lot, which is kind of surprising, but like you were saying with the Overwhelm, going down, getting the Victor once again buffed up, this Victor is huge.
Yep, and Victor will be flipping this round. He will be getting +3, +4 if you count the level up in total from all of these augment cards, and then next round, there's going to be 3 more created cards generated to make Victor even bigger with the Scout Overwhelm Challenger. Looks like it might be ending the game quickly if Kyron doesn't get Quicksand in hand.
Yeah, and we were talking about he even gets a spell shield. We were talking about the buffs, but if he just gets so much more extra buffs, like it was buff galore, but it's going to be even more of that. Like this Victor should not be dying anytime soon, and unless you're able to keep him in place, it's just going to be so hard for Karen the mage.
Yeah, and notably, 7 health keeps him out of Talia's range. He could like drag the Talia and kill it and not be threatened unless Talia uses the Absolver. But like we mentioned, he does have ways to protect in hand. Uses that on the Ballistic bot actually, keeps that alive through the right of I always just call it right, I guess.
Yeah,
The 3 mana card.
it's fine. It's at least pretty apparent what he does, and I'm kind of surprised that he keeps ballistic bot alive. Like I was saying, like there's a lot of throwaway units that you can really just keep up.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
drew what I believe was a +9/+9 buffed Starlit
Yep.
Seer off the top two. Notably, does draw that Quicksand, but is not able to break this Spell Shield before applying it. So he won't be able to use that Quicksand. That Spell Shield roll is saving weight in this matchup.
Yeah, like the way that Wade just set up his pictures so well, like yeah, it's hard for Karen the Mage. There was good opportunities for him to be able to pull it off, but the way that the setup for the picture happened, it was just so hard to be able to punish. Like it's not like Karen the Mage necessarily did something wrong, but it's that those kind of things where if you wait just one turn longer, it can just be completely detrimental. And we
And
see the six. Oh, sorry, I was just going
oh
to say
no,
we
yeah,
see the
and
six a little bit late, which ends up paying the price.
yeah, and that if you have the kind of opening hand that Victor Udyr deck had, it's really hard to answer. I mean, you had your spell generation and you had your Starlit Seer to start, and that's just going to get that train going all that earlier.
Yep. And now we're seeing the second game for this matchup between Wade and Karen the Mage. We have the Warlords on one side, and we have Talia 6 once again. I do want to give a quick update on the other matchups that we're going through. We have Lech 1-0 versus Samsons, so Lech winning, and we have Searcher Moon winning against Codeman Jack in his matchup. So just to keep updated with those, with the other matchups that are happening right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're jumping into this game here. We have the Sivir Akshan versus the same Talia Ziggs match. And let's see, we have Akshan on the board, Endless Devout dropping down, and things are getting off to a good start here.
Yeah, I'm seeing the hand from Wade, and for me, whenever I see this deck, I always think the same thing, and it's that for the first starting turns, I always value much more having the action out. Because you really want him to get the level up, you really want him to be as strong as possible. The Sivir can wait a little bit longer, but if you get that action rolling so early on, it's going to be so massive for yourself.
Absolutely. Option that could happen here, yep, Sivir's coming down. Yeah, not having Akshan early in this deck isn't necessarily the end of the world, but it definitely always feels better to have Akshan on 2 or 3, just so that you can get that landmark pop, so that you can get that Absolver triggered possibly early, because it might take a little while to get that Sivir leveled up too.
Yeah, it's just like you're pointing out, it just makes the setup for the deck that you want to pull off feel much more, feel better. It feels smoother, and it just happens much more naturally, which I think you always value for these warrior decks. Now, on the side of the current mage, I think that he has quite a few landmarks that he can work with, but compared to the last time, he doesn't have the Talia yet, nor the 6, so it's not like popping these landmarks is going to be wonders just yet. It does allow to have a good enough board to try and survive an attack potentially, but you're still playing for that 6, right? So the fact that the 6 or the Talia is not here can be a little bit hard on Karen the Mage just yet.
Yeah, and the Kyra the Mage had the classic Endless Devout into Naturalist play, which is going to be giving him a lot of board value here in the matchup, where board value is usually dominated by the Sivir Akshan player, so that's going to be putting weight a little bit on the back foot here until he can deal with this board, and maybe buying enough time for Kyra the Mage to flip his champions and burn through.
Yeah, one good thing, even though Karen the Mage does take some of the units, like you were saying previously, and it's the thing that we see the side of the warlords kind of value much more, it's still fine the fact that you were able to take some of the units, because if you just leave the Sivir and the action out there, like if you are able to take any more units that does come through, more times than not, you don't want to throw away the action and the Sivir, so you can get better attacks later on as well. Going for an attack this time with the Sivir, as well as another 5/5 to try and get as much damage as you can out. And I feel like you're just throwing away this unit if you're carrying the mage.
Yeah, you are probably just throwing away this unit. Excellent hand for Chiron the Mage too. You see he has another Naturalist in hand, so he can just pop that again and refill his board. This is kind of relentless, actually. That is a lot of value for Wait to try to deal with in this matchup.
Yeah, it's a good way to keep up the pace for carrying the mage and try and make his attack later on as valuable as possible. Like he just gets enough value to be able to reset the units that are on board, and he's not even going to take any damage in this turn. I feel like this is quite nice. Like you're compared to Wade, carrying the mage doesn't value units as much, in my opinion. So I feel like if you're able to stop some of the attacks and get yourself in a better spot, it's going to be quite fine even if you throw away some units.
Yeah, absolutely. And the pass here from Chiron the Mage doesn't want to use too many of his tools if there is a possible deny or a rally coming out from Wait. Just waiting to see what that 4 mana does. Basically has a free pass button based on that token generated from the Vikurin 5-drop. Drops down the Naturalist. You see he's going to pop that landmark, refill his board again, and then he's going to have a pretty good-looking open attack coming through.
Was he able to get the level up 6 yet with those pop-ups or not yet?
I'm pretty sure his Ziggs is flipped, yes. And Sivir is going to be using the Action Champ spell here, which is going to flip Sivir, and Action is going to be flipped by next turn too. So both champions are actually going to be level 2.
Yeah, which is going to be so massive for Wade. I was thinking with the 6, because if he's already flipped, you can just throw it in the next turn and try and make a big enough attack to set up the form already. And yeah, Action getting flipped. We have the level ups for the Warlords already, which can potentially mean next turn we may see a big attack out of Wade.
Yeah, and you're going to see the Ziggs probably come down here, which is going to activate that Absolver, and he also has that, well, whenever Ziggs does come down, it's going to activate Absolver, and he has the 3-mana burst card there. The fact that you can just give a unit so much attack and overwhelm with the combination of those cards in this deck from destroying a landmark could just surprise blow this game out.
Yeah, like it could be so much damage out of nowhere that can be quite hard to react to or be able to survive to it. We do see the Absolver being pulled. Oh, sorry for that. We still do see the Absolver being pulled by Wade, which can buff up some of the units, so at least trying to keep them survivable, but alive, but can be riskier later on as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And keeping the 5-drop alive with 1 health here is important, because if he strikes again, he's just going to get another proc to push that Akshan through and possibly pop the second landmark here.
Yeah, that second landmark is going to be quite nice to get out of the way. And one thing that I do want to say, that I do want to mention about, I was going to say this, the 6 has yet to be put down. We now finally see it, but I was thinking taking a little bit long to try and put down the 6, which I think should have come out already.
I think, yeah, he didn't lead the ooh. That is going to be very dangerous here. This Ziggs is going to probably be going down. Yeah, he wanted to play the 1-drop so that he would have that landmark fodder to try to kill the 5/5 off with the right before playing the Ziggs, which is understandable. Just unfortunate they had the sharp sight in hand here.
Yeah, try to keep the Sivir up, but you still have the Absolver. Yeah, like there's still the Absolver, so not only blowing up some of the resources to keep the 6 alive, but it's going to die in a way.
Yeah, and that feels pretty dire for Chiron the Mage here, because that Preservarium, or that Preservarium was going to be his only way of really trying to refill the value of this hand here. So he's kind of just preying on top decks now.
Yeah, the thing is that next turn you have such a nice attack by the side of Wade. Like you have the both champions level up plus a potential like just super huge attack if you get another good unit, and it just feels kind of risky for Chiron the Mage.
Yeah, and he's gonna have the second palace coming down here, or the second palace coming down here too, so he can start working towards getting both of these counted down, and that is just ridiculous value.
Yeah,
Sivir is going to be giving the whole board overwhelm as well. This attack is looking scary.
Yeah, how much damage does he put with this attack? Like now it's 1711. So it's not the worst of situations. Like you're not dying, but it's a really huge attack, like we talked about. And because the six was taken out, now you're in such a tough spot because you don't have the burn that you were trying to bank on.
Yeah, two really, oh,
Yeah,
yep, that is going to be the surrender.
yeah, it was like you said it perfectly. It was depending quite a lot on that top deck, and if the top deck is potentially not perfect, it was going to be really hard on Karen the Mage to be able to pull it off.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Wait pulls off a 2-0, pretty quick 2-0 at that, honestly. It had really clean opening hands, really clean draws, and it played super well.
Yeah, like I like the way that he managed with the Warriors in that second game because we pointed out how having that action at the start sets up quite nicely for just the snowball effect or everything that you want to pull off with your setup to run much more smoothly. But even then, utilizing the I'm not sure how it's called. I just call it Cataclysm because I kind of forgot the name. But the Cataclysm to kill the six right there, and also getting that extra power to buff up the series is so important because you always have to value those extra things to keep your champions up and also to take away from your enemy. And I think that Wade managed those quite nicely in this and in the previous game. Like because we cannot take away either the picture, how huge it was in the previous game, how well it was set up, and how well it was just developed to try and take the match in the previous game and in this game as well.
Yeah, clean play coming out from Wait there. Just close those games out very, very well.
Yeah, and to update onto the other matchups as well, we do have Ledge versus Samsons being 1-1, so they're going to a game three, as well as Seared Moon against Code and Jack, both going to a game three. So we are going to jump into one of those matches. Not sure which one just yet, but I want to get confirmation. Uh, Okay, perfect. We are going with Ledge versus Samsons, which, like I said, game three. To quickly just look at the decks that they are running, we have Ledge with Fisaphilios, Six Talia, and Caitlyn Ezreal, Fisaphilios, which we saw, and then we have, if I'm not wrong, it's Certma. Just quickly. Samsons, sorry, Samsons, which is running Yumi Pantheon, Scouts, and Ezreal Picture. Not sure which ones do they are didn't by the way.
Yeah, okay, so we are hopping into game here. We see the Aphelios Fizz and the yeah, this is gonna be the Ezreal Victor deck. Is this a Shellfolk deck, of course?
Nice. Quite nice. And already quite a huge setup. We're in quite a bit into the game, so there's already quite a lot that it's been done. But Samson's taking quite a bit of damage. He's on 12 health on the Nexus right now, and Ledge on 20 health with quite a nice setup. The Aphelios already set up as well. He has a lot of good cards to try and just make this Aphelios get a lot of impact, so has a really good board to play around with this turn.
Yeah, noting the elusive two drop here for the side of Lech, and that is there's I don't believe there's going to be an answer in hand for that. Oh, never mind.
Yep.
Pulled the wallop out off of the time trick here and got two of them thanks to Shellfolk. So that is going to stop that from hitting face for at least 2 turns if he chooses to use it.
Yeah, good value there to try and keep himself there. You do end up pulling the weapon out of Aphelios to try and get another one out, and you do get the level closer to that level of Aphelios, which is going to be quite important.
Yeah, Lech going for the Infernum on the Owlcat here, trying to just push as much damage as possible. It looks like wants to close this game out before the Shellfolk deck runs. It just generates too much value here, which Lech is hoping that it hasn't by now.
I'm pretty like there's a lot of value already from what we're seeing, but yeah, like it's the kind of thing that you're playing against when you're against this kind of deck where you just want to stop it as soon as you can. And this damage is obviously not going to be enough to take the win, but it's quite a lot of damage. Oh, there it is.
Yeah, that stun is super great here for him to have pulled off of that time trick. That's going to keep him from going down to 1 health and possibly being threatened with lethal next turn from another Infernum or another Overwhelm attack.
Yeah, like honestly, just taking 5 damage this turn is going to be quite good for Samson's. Like the time that he's just buying himself is so good.
Yeah, is Samson's main decking Entrapment there, the second card in his hand? Because if it wasn't pulled off of a Conchologist, then that is super interesting because you can take cards from the enemy deck with Shellfolk on board if you cast that.
That's actually quite an interesting thing to look up to look forward to if it does keep on happening. And I want to see what else can Samsung do with that. Like he has already a lot of value, but he did take out a lot of his units on board. I'm pretty sure he needs to replenish quite a bit, but value that he has already in hand is so huge.
Yeah, let's see what he top decks here, and it looks like he top deck a Felios. Very clutch right here.
Yeah,
Another
quite
Autocross
important.
coming down, another Prank, another card in hand at a discount for Samsons.
Yeah, like it would be really unlucky for Lech if the prank ends up affecting the affiliates and you kind of have to suffer that. But we'll wait a little bit on that.
Yep, choosing to prank here, he has the choice of Paddle Star, which was just generated off of the Conchologist.
Yep.
Not gonna be super great here without... Ooh, he does actually have a way to stun in hand, but he picks the 0-mana Yordle Squire, of course, here, which is just gonna give more procs for this Shellfolk.
Yeah, but he does pull off the affiliates, which luckily wasn't prank. Didn't take anything else to be able, or any affection, any attack to its value. And getting now the pick here, did he? I think he picked. Yeah, he picked the sniper. I'm pretty sure.
He picked Calibrum. I don't believe there's gonna be a way for Lech to save this Aphelios, though. The fact that there were 3 of these Sump Fumes in hands is just brutal for the 3 health champion decks. And no ways to protect it in hand.
It's what this deck does bring, right? Like it's the kind of thing that it's brutal, but it's something that you just have to accept because of how much you get out of this deck.
Yeah, the open attack here from Lech is actually looking fairly good. However, he's gonna have that elusive 6/5, and it just seems like the Shellfolk is gonna be dying, and that Guiding Touch pull from the enemy deck with that Entrapment is gonna be huge. That might save him here on this open.
Yeah, could potentially be what keeps him up from that one more from one more turn to maybe pull something off. Ledge taking a little bit of that shape damage that was that on the deck, but yeah, quite important to stop that from happening. To stop this attack from happening.
Yeah, second stun here coming out. Shellfolk just provides so much value in that way that you could just pull 1 stun and suddenly you have 2 in hand.
Yeah, like it just stops a lot of the critical moments that can just turn around a game from happening, and that's kind of the huge value that you always find in this Shellfolk build. Like it's just always stopping something bad from happening to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Importantly, though, Lech's game plan is not necessarily bound to Aphelios. If he does top deck a Fizz, there are plenty of ways still to close this game out.
Yeah, like you're pointing out, Lech is not necessarily in a spot that he cannot win. It's just that it's been hard for him to find that last attack to just be able to get the win. But at the end, he still is in a quite a good spot. He has units to be able to play around, and Samsung has used a lot of the cards that he had at hand. So his value has been diminished quite a bit compared to where he was previously.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking at the draws here, he picks, let's see. Yep, picks Star Chart off of that, so hoping to get more value here. Let's see what he picked. Yep, the Messenger, so that he can just get some more of that draw, trying to cycle through and find more of his win conditions as this goes on. Archivist here. Okay, there is going to be a lot of Otterpuses played here this round.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm a fan of the Otterpurse, so I hope we see it. It just looks so cute, but yeah, it's getting pulled off, and that's going to be so important for the attack. That, like, getting those units out for an attack, not necessarily your own attack, but the enemy's attack to stop it from happening. Getting those units on board, it's going to be so nice. I was thinking maybe Ledge takes the charger just because getting that extra damage could have been quite good if you really want to just make the win happen as soon as possible.
Yeah, that could be. Possible reason he didn't would just be because this Shellfolk Ezreal deck is going to be running so much removal, trying to get that Ezreal flipped, of course.
Okay.
There's just going to be... this is just part of playing against Shellfolk that you have to accept, though. There's just going to be a lot of playing an Otterpuss, getting a card in your hand, playing an Otterpuss, and just seeing your the cards in your hand start to cost more and more and more.
Kind of an infinite cycle, right? Like it just
Yeah.
becomes harder and harder to play certain things, and the enemy just keeps playing and playing things.
Yeah, looking, let's see, we have the Lightning Rush too, stolen out of the enemy hand here, which is going to allow him to replay some of these cards in hand, as well as provide some burn and removal. Let's see, he does have the 3-mana card that sets a units to a 1/6 that is going to save him from this elusive attack next round.
These pranks are feel so hard on ledge. Like it's understandable, but they feel so hard on ledge. And even if he pulls off an attack on the next turn, there's so much value already in board. Like this is what we were talking about. If you get your units down and you stop a huge attack, then you really don't care if the enemy has a better attack than you. Like you just need to stop it and that's it.
Yeah. Fey Aid, the top deck here, gonna give him possible burn or value generation here, depending on whether he picked the telescope or the... Nope, he did. He picked the 7-drop. That's gonna deal 4 to face here, and that is certainly scary to see if you're Samsens.
Yeah, and I'm quite in favor of that as well. I like going for the Fey here because you do need the damage to pull off right now. Like you're getting so pranked so consistently that you really need to be able to finish this as soon as you can.
Yeah, and he knows that he can safely recall this Otterpuss, and it's not going to get removed, so it's not going to stop that from going through, because he can see the entire hand for Lech here. I'm pretty sure every card in his hand is visible.
As it should be, obviously.
Samsens is also playing with caster vision.
Yeah, he knows every movement that Lech wants to pull off. Takes away. This feels so harsh for Lech. Like it's on the deck, but I think that watching it's not as bad as having to experience it, right? Like when you play against it, it just feels so hard on you.
Yeah, I actually think Lech is going to be able to find the damage to close this game out. He has the, admittedly, 7 mana, but it's a 2 damage burn spell in hand. I think that he might be able to close this out. Oh, there is the Guiding Touch in hand, though, I forgot about for Samsens, which is going to keep that.
Yeah, like he has... it feels like on hand he has a response for what Lech could have been able to pull off.
Yeah. Pulling from the Guiding Touch. Wow, there was just so much value in the hand here for Samsens.
Yeah. Like the only thing that I could think that Samsons doesn't use that is if he runs out of mana and he cannot get any mana back, which shouldn't be realistic watching it. So
yeah, are definitely scared though. I don't know how many have been played, but I do know that Lech has Pokey Sticks in this deck too, so he could draw into possible damage here. It is not necessarily looking like a favored game here for Samsens at the moment, despite the value in his hand.
yeah, like we need to consider still. There's 17 damage. There's 17 health on the Nexus, so it should take a little bit longer for Lech to be in a top spot, at least I think.
Yeah, he's feeling really comfortable here, despite the fact that he has less cards in hand. And he just drew another elusive attached card. It's just going to be more ways to possibly end the game here, and Samsens is running out of ways to stop these elusive attacks.
Yeah, like he has quite a good amount of things to stop it from happening. The thing is that he doesn't have a stun now, right? Like there's no stun to try and stop this 8 and 8, which would be like the way to play it if I'm watching it.
Yeah, going to recall the Otterpuss again and pop the Spell Shield here.
Maybe
Going for the slow
steak.
game plan. Probably going to be trying to just get this board taken out. Poison Dart is an interesting take here. 2 damage, 6 puff caps in the enemy deck for 1 mana total.
Well, at least for that one for 0, because that doesn't cost. But yeah, trying to keep that stack potentially for later on, for next possible draws, as well as just taking some of the board out, which would be ideal.
And passing here, fairly confident in his ability to live through this open attack. Top decks the Ezreal.
Is this where you, well, at least for us watching, is this where you begin to worry when you top deck the Ezreal and you can put it out?
Yes, I am wanting to see what his hand is here. I don't think he can stop this from going through, though.
I know you're thinking and stuff, but could you
We
make
can block with the Ezreal one, and he does have the he does have the getting touch. I think it is. So
Oh, that actually is gonna
ooh,
save him potentially. Oh my goodness. Yeah, the Ezreal has to go down here, but he is gonna be able to kill off this hungry Owlcat and save himself for yet another round. The Ezreal chipping Lech down from that 17 he was just at last turn, all the way down to 9 at this point.
yeah, it's becoming it took a turn, a quite critical turn for Ledge. He does go for the guiding touch, which I was thinking if he was going to actually opt into for now, and he does. So at
Uh-huh.
least getting a little bit more health back, but that attack gets completely denied.
Yeah, so staying alive for another turn here for Samsung. This is a very grindy game. I love to see games that go this late with this much value generation. Bandle versus Bandle matchup, of course.
As it should be. I'm kind of interested in this from your side, but isn't this kind of is this the kind of games that are the worst that to lose though? Because it's so close and you lose because of one small margin, so it can feel bad, right?
As a personal note, I really, really hate losing to Shellfolk a lot.
Okay.
I just the 4 Otterpuss at a time coming out, I just makes me cry every single time. Yeah, this is very well played from both players here. Like they're both playing super well with the cards that they're given in hand. It's a really fascinating match to watch.
Yeah, like the reactions from both players have been quite nice. He's taking a lot of damage with this huge attack from Samsons, but he still has a guiding touch. Yeah, like he still has enough to survive, but survive for how long? It's the problem.
Yeah,
Oh, he
and
gets an
there
ability.
is 3 burn damage in hand for Samsans too, between that poison dart and that lightning rush too. So I think he might have enough to finish this off.
Yeah, it seems like there's not enough for us to survive. Okay, there's the Pale Cascade to keep the unit alive. But yeah, like you're pointing out, there's enough maybe to just take the win next time. If this
Yeah,
does
I
come
don't.
through a little
Yeah,
too late,
he
maybe.
top decks Fizz. He doesn't top deck a way to stop that lightning rush from coming through. So I believe this should be game here.
Captives, maybe no, they Tafilos a lot, but yeah, no, it should be game from as far as I can see.
Yeah, slightly too late here. Lech does draw the Fizz and the Aphelios, and he also has the Papercraft Dragon for the Fizz.
Yes,
Unfortunately, it's going to be slightly too late.
if that miss comes one turn before, like if it comes with the attack that was happening with the Ezreal, I feel like that's it. That Lech wins completely. But really unlucky that he couldn't pull it off previously. It gets a little bit too late, and nice by Samsons, grinding the game out for as much as he could, trying to make it last as long as he can, and at the end taking the win, taking the win in this matchup, putting if I'm not wrong, Samsons was on I need to quickly look it up because I don't remember. Yeah, Samsung was an IC Gaming Team A. So taking 2 wins for their side, and Sirman won as well. So it was a 3 match victory for IC Gaming A. Open Pass doesn't win any game. So getting a 3-0 today, quite nice for IC Gaming Team A.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, jumping back to that last match, drawing that
Yeah.
Ezreal was incredibly clutch. It blocked the elusive damage, and it allowed him to pull off the last bit of burn to end that game. That was just such a great draw from Samsans, and he played it beautifully.
Yeah, like the damage from the Ezreal coming in so clutch, like you're pointing out. Like without that, could have been a little bit riskier. Like I feel like there was still places to maneuver it, but that Ezreal really coming in clutch, like you're pointing it out. And it was a game that had to be grinded out. Like when we came in, it was looking so good for Ledge. Like it felt like everything was in place for him to be able to pull it off. But you need to grind out the victory when you're playing the conch like that. The side of Samsons was able to pull it off, and at the end, it must feel quite nice for him to be able to take the win.
Yeah, that win is gonna feel incredible too. Both players played their hearts out there. Absolutely, just went as far as they could with what cards they were given, and yeah, beautiful gameplay. You love to see it. That's what we love casting this for.
Yeah, especially when it's close games like that, because that means that we get to see good matches, we get to see long enough matches that we can talk enough about it, and we just don't need to feel off certain things. And it felt quite good for watching IC Gaming take that victory, because that means that with that win, they are closer to open pass in standings. Like they are essentially the same. They should be. They are getting quite a nice opportunity to get higher up in the playoffs. We need to remember into the standings to get into playoffs. We need to remember that playoffs is 4 teams per group. So you need to get those victories, especially with how close we are to the final week 7. So these teams need the victories. But with that, I'm pretty sure we are done for the night. We had two great series with quite a good amount of matches, a good amount of decks to see. And for you, it was the first time casting with Aegis Esports. So how was the night?
Yeah, it was a fun time, and you incredible co-caster. Absolutely, thank you so much. It flowed really well. I had a great time, and I hope to be back.
Yeah, it's always great having people that actually can understand it enough so that they can help me, because obviously I'm not the best. So it was great having you here. Hopefully we get you back. Hopefully I'm back. If you want me back, say it to Hirsch. Go criticize him for not giving me more chances to be here, but not really. Thank you everyone for being here tonight. Thank you for watching this series. Thank you for the players for giving up so many good games. And we'll be back next week with a lot of more matches, a lot of more great matchups. But we also have tomorrow EMEA, yeah, EMEA tomorrow. So be sure to check that out with other great pair of casters and other great set of matches.
Yeah, absolutely. We will be back tomorrow, of course.